So, good evening, and thank you all for being here today to help us celebrate this incredible milestone of our parents' 50th wedding anniversary. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ben, their eldest son, and I couldn't be more honored to stand here and share just a few words about these two amazing people. So let's go ahead and start at the beginning. Both my parents are from the great state of Ohio. Mom was born in January of 1954 in Bowling Green. She is one of 7 children. Dad was born in June of 1954 in Dover. He only has one older sister. Mom's dad was a Korean War vet and a truck driver. Her mom was a homemaker. Dad's dad was a World War II vet, and he was a roof repairman, and his mom worked at a grocery store. Mom being in a large family, you can imagine how things are being tough. Not a lot of money, lots of potato soup, hand-me-down clothes, toys, etc. Mom being the oldest daughter did do her part in helping her mom take care of her younger siblings, even though that came with sibling squabbles. A couple of those squabbles involved Mom's brother tearing up her favorite doll that she had. So she tore up his football. Another time, she got whacked in the face with a chain that he was messing around with. So the next time he was riding his bike, she threw a broomstick in his spokes. Other than that, she liked to play sports, softball, volleyball. She's very book smart, and she was valedictorian of her high school. Dad, even though he was in a small family, things were also tough. He was the annoying little brother that liked to pester his sister, and he was a little mischievous. One time when they were out and about, a local ice cream company had their horse-drawn carriage going through the streets, and Dad stuck his head out the car window wanting to get a better look. His sister pushed him out of the way, so to get back at her, he pushed the window up button and locked her head into place. Dad had a pretty good group of friends, and they were out running around one day, and they ended up in one of those friends' garage, and they discovered a box of dynamite. Sweaty, wet dynamite. If you don't know, when dynamite gets that way, it becomes very unstable and can explode unexpectedly. So naturally, they took it out of the box. They went in the woods and played with it. Opening those sticks, placing contents under cans and bottles, and lighting a fuse to see how high they could get them to fly in the air. So yeah, Dad probably shouldn't be alive. The other question I have always pondered, though, is what was his friend's dad doing with a box of dynamite in his garage to begin with? During the winter months, him and his friends would go up to a local bridge overpasses, and as cars drove by, they would dump large amounts of snow on cars below, blocking their view, causing them to swerve and almost wreck. Other than that, he was into art and drawing. He was a drummer in his marching band, and he liked to get his hands dirty in auto and wood shop. But both of them know their best career option after graduating high school in 1972 was the military, and they both enlisted in the U.S. Air Force. Dad, though, was initially rejected from joining the Air Force due to him having severe flat feet. The recruiter told him if he really wanted to join, go to a different county's recruitment office and push up on the balls of your feet just to make it appear like you have some sort of arch. Somehow that worked, and he was accepted. And good thing he was. So now it's 1973, and they both are stationed at Langley Air Force Base in Hampton, Virginia. They were both working at a hospital. Mom was working in as a medical technician. She was helping doctors and nurses in labor and delivery department. Dad worked as a diet therapy specialist, where he would help load meal carts and trays for all the patients in the hospital. They ended up having the same group of friends, and they liked to hang out and during their mealtime in the chow hall. But a common after-hours activity that they all liked to do was meet up nearby a park, sit around a campfire, singing songs and playing made-up games. One of those games was called Pick Up and Smear. I believe we all had similar game growing up. I do remember, though, we had a much more colorful name for it, a name I won't repeat here. But if you aren't familiar with the game, you place a football on the ground, and if you are brave enough, you pick up the ball and try to run to a goal line and score. Mom, being as competitive as she is, and don't let her short stature fool you, she hit a guy so hard that it sent him to the hospital with back injuries. After seeing this, Dad started to have feelings for her. Some time passed, and he finally worked up the nerve to ask her out. They were at the park as usual, and he asked her to go to the movies. She said yes. They then started to play a game of dodgeball with their friends. In the heat of battle, Dad thought it would be wise to attack and throw the ball at Mom. Maybe it would impress her. I'm sure, though, as he reared back and released the ball, everything probably went into slow motion. Instant regret, screaming, "No!" as the ball hit with him. But bloody nose and all, she still did. And officially, their relationship had begun. After a few dates, they shared their first kiss on April 19th, 1974. Mom knew that this might be important because she did write about it in her journal the day it happened that she was keeping during her college class. Dating progressed, and after a few short weeks, Dad was falling in love with her. In May, they took a road trip up to Michigan so that they could attend their fellow Air Force counterparts, good friends Carl and Judy's wedding, whom also just celebrated 50 years. Congratulations. On the way to the wedding, though, they stopped by at both their family houses in Ohio just for a brief visit, and Dad had decided that he was going to marry Mom. So he asked her dad for permission to marry her, and he also informed his mom and dad that he was going to as well. All of this, of course, was without Mom knowing. He had saved up and purchased a small diamond ring for around $300. On May 23rd, 1974, just a couple of months after dating, was going to be the day he was going to pop the question. So that day he asked Mom to dress nice because he had arranged a photographer to come take a portrait of her that he wanted. He went and picked her up at her dorm room and told her how nice she looked, but said, there's something missing. Asked her to look in the glove box, and of course she found the ring that Dad had put in there. Dad then popped the question. Even though she was surprised, she just couldn't say yes or no. So he told her just to take her time and think about it. A few weeks had gone by, still no answer, even though Dad was pressing her for one. Mom just asked him to take the ring back because she just wasn't ready. Dad had to do the sad walk back to the jewelry store, and he got a refund. But with the money, he put some new tires on his car and he bought a bicycle. But they did continue dating, of course, and got to know each other more. So even though things didn't go as planned, Dad knew that he was still going to marry her. Some time had passed, and out of the blue, Mom finally realized just how much he loved her and how much she loved him. So she asked him to ask her the question again. And of course, she said yes. Initially, the wedding was going to be in June, but they really wanted their good friends Carl and Judy to be there, whom just got orders to go to Greece and be stationed there. So they moved the wedding back to April 19th, which actually ended up working out better. Because exactly a year to the date after sharing their first kiss, they became man and wife. And if this was a Hallmark movie, that would be the end. The credits would roll, and you're kind of left wondering, what happened? Did they make it? Did they have a family? That is why I never really cared for those movies that end kind of at a wedding date, because even with all the adventures and obstacles leading up to that point, that truly is the easy part. The hard part is what comes next. In early 1976, Dad finally got his opportunity to switch jobs and train to become a computer programmer. After 3 months training in Mississippi and a missed first wedding anniversary, He returned back to Virginia where he started his career in the IT field. It was about that time they realized that they wanted to move closer to both the families in Ohio, so they were granted a transfer to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base up in Dayton. This is where the hard part of their early marriage started to hit. Mom and Dad were living in a trailer. They didn't really have a lot of disposable income. Dad was doing his IT work, but he was also working a second job as a cake baker. Money was so tight, and Mom would often get on him and yell if he ever got a candy bar or a soda on the way home from work. Even though things were tough financially, they knew they wanted to start having children. Mom always said she wanted to have as many kids as she could by the time she was 30. They prayed about it and started trying for kids. Mom did have 2 miscarriages prior to finally having Angela in February 1978. With this, they both decided it was time to leave the Air Force, and they ended their commitments early. Shortly thereafter, Dad landed his first, which didn't last long, and second civilian IT jobs back near his mom and dad in New Philly, Ohio. They bought their first home together. After another unfortunate miscarriage, they were successful in growing the family by one when I came into this world. Things were going great, but by 1981, only 2 short years after moving back closer to the family, Dad lost his job and we relocated to LaGrange, Georgia. But the time spent in LaGrange was also very short. Just 18 months after being there and after another miscarriage, the family did grow one by one more when Nick was born. But unfortunately, Dad was laid off again. So the boxes were packed up and we relocated to Lewisburg, Tennessee. Lewisburg would be an almost 8-year adventure. Mom finally got the house, big yard for us kids that she always wanted. She was also able to complete her ADN, got her RN license, and started her nursing career. Dad had his first real successful IT job going as well. Even though their lives became more about us kids and making sure that we had everything that we needed, they still made time for themselves. Mom played some softball, they both joined a volleyball league, and they enjoyed playing tennis after hours against some of their good friends. Dad always had a camcorder or a camera out with so many videos and pictures of us as a family doing things that we loved it together. However, there is 2 things I wish we had a picture or video of. The first being the day Dad decided to change up his look. Angela, Nick, and I were sitting down for dinner that Mom was just finishing up just before Dad came home from work. And Mom said, "When your dad walks in the door, we need to all point at him and start laughing." And we were like, "Why?" Because during his lunch break, he decided to go out and get a perm. Sure enough, Dad walks in looking fabulous with his head full of Richard Simmons curls. Of course, we did just as Mom pointed and laughed. Dad immediately ran to the back of the house, scrubbed his hair, and tried to wash out as much of that curls as he could. The second being was the day Mom went to jail for Dad. Every so often, we would ride up the road about 20 minutes to the town of Columbia to go to the pizza buffet or to the movies. The highway going there, the cops were always strict and usually would pull you over for anything to show just above the speed limit. And Dad already had previously gotten a ticket or 2. Well, Mom was being a side seat driver and watching the speed like a hawk. She still does. While coming home at this particular time, a car passed us speeding and a cop pulled out and sure enough started going after the other car. For some odd reason, as Dad approached the 2 cars pulled over, the cop flagged Dad down to pull over too. Mom was so angry because she knew Dad wasn't speeding, and it got worse because the cop was of a larger size, and he parked between the 2 cars, and he made Dad and the other driver get their license and come to him. That is when Mom lost it. She got out of the car, stormed over to the passenger side of the cop's car, started screaming and yanking on the door handle, trying to get in and give him a piece of her mind. The cop told her she better step away or he was going to take her to jail. And yes, Dad still got a ticket. Our days in Lewisburg came to an end in 1991, but for the first time it's because Dad got offered a promotion as an IT manager here down in Alabama, and he couldn't turn it down because it was for him. So we packed up once again and moved here to Alexandria. Dad having this new position, he had a lot of responsibilities, and it was a lot harder for him to be involved in our daily, weekly lives. Mom was working rotating shifts at the hospital for a while, but was still doing everything she could to make sure we were still doing all the things that made us happy and kept us active. Here we are 15 years after numerous job losses and hardships. Mom and Dad were finally at a point where they could live comfortably and give us kids the kind of life they never really had. Were things always perfect? No. There were numerous teenage parent battles. Dad had many evenings where he would come home, and as soon as he sat down, he would have to log back in to work. That did cause some tension between him and Mom. Those few bad things didn't stop all the good things that happened. They got to see all three of us become Christians, graduate from high school, be able to afford to send us all three to college to get our degrees. And we all got married as well. I do believe that more than anything they have enjoyed, though, is becoming grandparents to 4 grandsons. Sometimes maybe a little too much. I remember this one time when I was living in Mobile and I had called. We were in the middle of our conversation and I heard some noises in the background. And Mom said, "Well, the baby's here, gotta go." Click. But Mom and Dad were now kind of enjoying their empty nest life and were counting down the days to retirement. Mom did have the opportunity to do 4 mission trips to Venezuela and Africa. They have taken numerous trips around the country to visit national parks and even trips over to Europe. Things couldn't have been going better, but of course that was until 2013. Mom went into for her yearly mammogram, and they discovered a small eraser-sized lump, and after a biopsy diagnosed her with breast cancer. Mom bravely and aggressively attacked it. She had a double mastectomy and chemotherapy. But watching her go through that was so hard because you truly feel so helpless. I know her and Dad prayed nightly, and with God's help, Mom proved her toughness and beat it. It was a long road back, but she completed her reconstruction and officially retired from nursing. Dad still planned on working a couple more years, but Mom was enjoying retirement life. Extra time with the grandkids, pool time during the summer, trips to Ohio to see her family, and most importantly, spending as much time as she could with Dad. Making each day special and a blessing for what she had just gone through. But with that said, it may have taken some time, but Dad was finally able to get his revenge for the whole perm fiasco. Okay. Mom, if you don't know, wasn't the best at adjusting to all the new technology that was coming out, especially with smartphones. Dad made it really easy for her. If she wanted to call any of us, she could just touch our picture on the phone and it would call us. He then thought it'd be a great idea that on one of her trips to Ohio, that he would set a unique ringtone for himself on her phone when he called. He waited until she texted us that she was at the gate waiting on her flight to call, knowing that the ringtone volume was going to be cranked way up. I wish we all could have been there, a fly on the wall, when, "Who that be? That be my baby daddy? That be my baby daddy!" Started blaring, and Mom scrambling around in her purse, trying to get to the phone to answer. Needless to say, she was not very happy with me. 2020 rolls around, and with COVID shutting everything down, the whole world. You wouldn't think anything could get any worse. But September 17th is a day that I think we'd all like to forget. Dad received the scariest phone call that he has ever gotten. Mom called stating something's wrong, confusion, not knowing how to use the phone, head was pounding. Dad, of course, called 911, and Nick was just around the corner, so he rushed over to be with her until the ambulance arrived. A CT scan showed that Mom had suffered a brain bleed stroke. She was airlifted to Birmingham for a neurospecialist to perform the surgery. And on September 20th, it was probably the longest day for all of us. Mom went to surgery, and due to COVID restrictions, no one was allowed in the hospital. And Dad had to sit out in the garage in his car and just wait. 12 hours later, he got word that she didn't make it through, but she did code 2 times. But due to how deep the brain bleed was, even though the doctor was able to get it stopped, there would more than likely be permanent brain damage. All 4 of us, though, finally got to see her late that evening, and she was on life support. We just surrounded her, us 4. We locked arms, we prayed that if it was God's will, she would be returned to us. She would come out of this stronger than ever. And God heard our prayers. She is one of the toughest women I know. She pulled through. She slowly recovered. And Dad and her are never happier right now. I just wish that they could do more. And, Dad's now had to become a caretaker of his own mother. So even though their lives are a lot slower right now, Dad finds time for modeling little cars and Mom just likes to sit and watch her TV shows. They make breakfast for each other every day. Nothing gets old seeing my mom look at him and say those 3 wonderful words. I love you. So, with that said, Dad, back in 1974, you spent $300 on a ring for her. Of course, she never got one because of that whole situation. So with inflation and today's prices, us 3 kids are going to give you $2,000 towards a ring for Mom. For coming, this really does mean the world to us. I'm sorry I couldn't get through this without booing my head off. But yeah, so basically the story of their lives are from our first kiss to forever. Congratulations, Mom and Dad. Here's to many more.